Board of Education of Homewood School District 153 for Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Mr. Morris?
I am present.
Mrs. Marks?
Here.
Mrs. Matei?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Here.
Mrs. Havenforth?
Here.
Mr. Bosch?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. I just want to mention before we get going with the agenda that Dr. Mitchell was not able to be here tonight. So we've asked Dr. McAllister to sit at the big kids table for the first time.
Feels good up here.
So welcome. Thank you. We have approval of the minutes from the e-learning public hearing of the Board of Education from September 14th, 2020, from the budget public hearing of the Board of Education of September 14th, 2020, and the minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Education from September 14th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections to any of those sets of minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have future dates. On November 2nd, we will be having, Monday, November 2nd, we will be having a remote planning day for our staff. And on Tuesday, November 3rd, we will be closed for Election Day. So it's a good opportunity for people to take their kids with them to vote if they have not already done so. And we have a presentation tonight, which is on assessment, curriculum instruction and assessment. So Kathy Schaefline
Hello.
and company is going to
Yes.
talk to
I
us.
don't know where to stand.
You may stand wherever you want. Actually, yes, Shelley Petbush nudges.
Is the microphone helpful?
You want me to take the microphone, but I don't want to stand with China.
We can right here.
All right. Hi. Hello. Good, nice to meet you. Yeah, but then,
All the way, all the way.
That works.
all right. Hi, guys.
Hi. Hello.
Can you hear me now? Oh, no.
Hello.
Okay, so I am going to keep it brief and rather informal. And I wanted to, first of all, introduce some members of the Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Team, fondly known as the CIA. We're very proud of the work that we're doing in our department right now. Behind me is Nikki Kerr, Administrator of Innovation and Academics. Myself, the Director of Curriculum. Over here is Catherine, who's going to speak in a little while. Catherine is our math instructional coach and data coordinator, or data diva, as I like to refer to her. She really has it down. And not here tonight is Morgan Mackey, our English language learning coordinator and grant coordinator, which I hope you will be able to hear more from her later because of all the extra work she's done on grants. And I like to refer to her as the grant goddess. But together, we work as a team with all of the teachers. And I wanted you to know part of, and what I think is one of the most important things that we do is work on the PLC model, professional learning communities. And the focus of professional learning communities to get our teachers involved in curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Asking the key questions. And we get to meet with all of the teachers in this district once a month. We give workshops at each building and are able to provide professional learning hours for our teachers for recertification on topics that relate to learning. The key is, how do we know if our kids are learning? What are they supposed to learn based on the standards in the curriculum? How do we know if they've learned it? What do we do if they haven't? And what do we do if they already have? So the intervention and enrichment. Those are all the pieces that go into it. So I just wanted to share with you, this month's focus is assessment. But I want to share with you some of the other focuses so far this year. In August, our focus was on instructional practices and engagement strategies in the remote learning world. That was key. It still continues to be key. How do we engage kids on a small screen? instead of in the classroom. And I have to tell you, I have had the pleasure of observing several of our new teachers already these past few weeks, and I've seen some amazing things. Lots of hard work that goes into it, lots of extra work that goes into it, and it's not easy for the teachers or the students, and they're working extra hard to do their best to make sure they engage the students in the learning. So that was August. In September, we focused on the learning and curriculum. What standards are most important, especially as we're looking at the COVID slide? What did the kids miss? What is most important that they get now? This month, it's on assessment. How do we know if they're learning? We're teaching, how do they know if we understand it? There are a lot of extra challenges with assessment in a remote world. We've been doing a lot of problem solving. We talk a lot about how the common assessments that relate directly to the standards that they're teaching, how can those teachers do that individually in the classroom? But also the bigger picture of that is also those universal assessments. And as you know, last month, the Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, announced that there will not be a waiver this year like there was last year in state testing. The federal mandate is that all states do standardized tests to measure learning. Now, last spring, every state received a waiver that we did not have to do that testing. She stated earlier last month that she will not be giving a waiver unless there are extreme circumstances, and that we should be creative and find ways to do that assessment. So we need to start right now. Typically, we do our universal screening, our own in-house universal screening for our own measurement in fall, winter, and spring. Obviously, we didn't get to do our spring testing either. Fall, we're remote again, but we're working on ways to assess in the remote world. There are protocols that we can use to do those universal screenings, but they're not going to be easy, and the question is, how valid will they be? Especially when, you know, mom and dad want their kids to do well, and they're there helping them, because they're trying to help teach them too. They're not, you know, it's not the equal testing environment, so we're concerned about that validity. So one of Catherine's responsibilities, Catherine Zarnicki, as data diva, or as in charge of data, is to work with all the RTI coordinators and their response to interventions. Are the interventions working? How do we know if we don't assess? Who needs it? How do we know if we don't do these assessments? So we need to get the assessments going, and we need to make sure they're reliable. So Catherine's been working with the RTI coordinators at the 3 schools, and we will be beginning universal assessments, and that's not to say that we haven't been doing lots of individual assessments. Especially for the little kids, those individual assessments are a lot of one-on-one reading assessments with the teacher and the student, pulling special kids in one at a time. Kids that need some extra attention have been brought into the building for assessment. Our teachers have put in extra hours afterwards doing those individual assessments. But to do the universal assessments is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. So I'm going to let Catherine come up and talk a bit about how we're going to roll that out, starting with James Hart, the end of this month. Catherine.
Hi everyone, I actually have usually a really loud mouth, so I'm going to try really hard with my voice to not like scream into the microphone. So I'll sit back just a little bit, tell me if I get a little too quiet. Okay, so with James Hart, I wanted to just give some shout outs. Like we've said a lot with our RTI coordinators. Jenna Struska has really started the snowball at James Hart as RTI coordinator to really just kind of look at the big picture of how do we assess with STAR benchmarking in that remote world. She kind of took that model of the expectations of what should a parent be responsible for at home? What should our students be responsible for taking this assessment, and what are our teachers' expectations? So she did a wonderful job of really trying to get all the stakeholders involved for what are the expectations for everybody when we start giving this assessment. So that has been extremely helpful. We started with some of our Tier 3 reading students, so some of our struggling readers. We started with small groups at James Hart to just try and figure out how can we do this in a big picture. Because you know we're talking about hundreds of students, so we started with a very small group of reading students, and we started seeing again, how can we make this go big picture? So starting October 21st, there's gonna be a STAR assessment day. Students will be taking the STAR reading and then the STAR math all at James Hart. We are hoping that we can obviously, this has been a big learning experience, so we know there might be some bumps in the roads. It might go great, we're gonna see what happens, and then in November, we're gonna snowball that into Churchill, so that way we can get grades 3, 4, and 5. So we're gonna start with James Hart. It's a lot easier sometimes with our older students to try and see how some of this will roll out versus starting with our younger age students. So we're gonna see again in October, on October 21st, STAR reading and STAR math. And then we will roll that out, hopefully, starting in November at Churchill. That is our tentative timeline right now. The big thing, though, that, when looking at data, a lot of times I'm sitting there with teachers, with RTI coordinators, we really have to take that overall screener, which is great, but we really have to take that and break that down. We have to go by student, by standard. We really need to get into the nitty-gritty of, we have this great overall score, but what does that mean? And that will help us get a little bit more detail-oriented on, is it all our students have gaps in this area? And that really is gonna come down to a lot of our common assessments as well. So again, at James Hart, they're working closely in their departments right now. Like Kathy said at our workshops, we focused a lot one month on what are the current standards we're working on right now, and then this past month is what is that assessment going to look like in the remote world. And I'll tell you right now, these teachers are getting extremely creative. It is not easy, as Kathy said, to try and figure out how to do this assessment remotely, and they are working very closely together in their departments, on their grade levels, trying to figure out, creative ways for us to do assessments. A lot of times, our days are, you sit down with paper, pencil, and in this world, it's really great to get some of those conversations going with students and just really listening to what the students are talking about and assessing a little bit differently. So it's maybe not just that typical paper, pencil that sometimes you're used to. We're learning how to just assess differently in this world. Okay, so James Hart's going to be doing that benchmark with STAR assessments. They've also done Fontes and Pinnell as needed. That is our reading fluency, and with the upper grades, sometimes they top out, so they're great readers, they're topping out, so that is only done as needed to assess their reading. And then we're going to continue doing that for our Tier 3 students and our IEP students. So that's where James Hart currently stands. Churchill, same thing, they're going to, like I said, work on their STAR assessments hopefully in November. They're also working closely at grade levels, especially in math and ELA, and they're using some of their current ELA resources to see what is there in terms of assessing remotely as well, including their math resources, and again, working together as much as they can, because it's not an individual thing. They are working so closely together as a grade level to try and come up with the best way that they can assess the students in math and reading. And then and Churchill and Willow both do the Fontes and Pinnell as well. So that is, again, their reading fluency. And then Willow, we're going to wait and see, Melissa, how it goes at James Hart, then Churchill, and then our littles, we're going to see, typically, because they're so little and at that early stage, our friends over at Willow sometimes don't even assess right in the fall anyways, especially with math. We wait a little bit longer with our friends over at Willow before we give them a STAR assessment. So they're kind of on the typical trend anyways of we wait, we get them used to school, those kinds of things, and we don't always assess right away with STAR at Willow. So Fontes and Pinnell has been great, and again, just working on those conversations for, we've done a lot of teaching now, what is the best way to assess our friends at Willow? And that's kind of where we stand overall with reading and math.
Any questions for us?
So how are we doing, or how is assessment going to be done for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? They're actually coming here to the building and doing it, or how is it being done?
So the STAR assessment is an online assessment, and there are some protocols that we can put in place so that they can do it on their computers at home, that we can lock down, we can go over what the requirements are, do a quick practice test, here's what you need to do to set it up. Because it should all be done at once, especially if you're doing a whole grade level each day. And there will be some extra challenges for validity when we don't have as much control over the environment. One of the ways we talked about doing it is making the students have the screen on, so that we can see that there are no other distractions, but also having another teacher or an aide in the classroom observing all of the students and their screens. So those are some logistics that we have to work out with that, which is why it's taking a little bit extra planning and scheduling, and then we want to see how it goes with the big kids first before we bring it down to the littles.
Kathy, I imagine one of the biggest challenges is going to be the adults in the home. I mean, I know we all want our kids to like do really well. And how are we going to teach the adults that the best way for us to help the students is to get an accurate assessment?
The best we can. We had that discussion today, even with the little kids, with the teachers of the littles, talking about mom and dad home, and the teacher's saying, okay, I have to see if they know their numbers, and mom's like, trying to help them learn, right? I mean, they're trying to help. So that's a challenge. And it's certainly a concern, and I heard that concern not just from our teachers, but I was at a curriculum meeting this morning, training for PLCs with different curriculum directors from all of South Cook. Some of them who have already done their universal testings, and they use MAP instead of STAR. And they said their second graders, who they know don't do well on their fall STAR scores, or fall MAP scores ever, did better than they've ever done when they did it at home. And like the 93rd percentile, when usually they're not even in the 50th average. So that gives you a question about how valid it's gonna be. We're gonna just have to take it for what it is, and we're gonna have to use it as a learning, another learning opportunity for all of us. But we have to keep trying and being creative and gather the information as best we can to help our students.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Okay, thank you. All right, are there any discussion items tonight? Is there anyone in the audience that came to address the board on any items that are not on tonight's agenda? Have at it. Just tell, if you could just tell us who you are, and then you can come up here if you want, that way,
You want me to put the mic
since
out
we're
here? so you can-
recording.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Bonnie Finelli. We have 2 students still in the district. I'm here tonight just because, as an educator, but also more importantly as a mom right now, I know Zoom is doing well for some students, and sometimes it's doing great for other students. But it's also not doing wonderful for some students. Some students are limiting progress, some students are decreasing their progress or backsliding, and we're seeing it in our household. I totally understand that some teachers and some families need remote. It is important. I think teachers are doing a wonderful job. I want to say that they've done outstanding. But I also see backslide with my daughter, and it's very hard for me to watch as someone who is always an average student. And I'm going home from work and doing stuff I do as a speech pathologist with my daughter every night to help her comprehend and do all these things I've never had to do with her ever before. And it's disheartening and it's disappointing. And I just feel like the students need the motto of the district where all students will learn and all students will be served. I'm seeing those students that are struggling, maybe aren't being served the best way they can. And I just want to know why we're saying January for our return to in-person learning. Like, what are the metrics we're using? I know there's a pandemic going on, but there's a lot of districts going back. I'm back with students full-time already. I just want to know what our plan is.
Sure. So Tony Finelli. So I am blessed enough to have a job where I don't have to be at work 9 to 5, so I have a little more morning responsibility. So I see my daughter, and I try not to left her behind, try to listen and help if she has a tech issue. I'm also blessed enough to have close family nearby that can come help us out a bunch when it's necessary, so I'm no issues with that at all. It is, talking about it, one thing that you guys see, I don't know everybody on the board or the audience personal situation. You guys see it from curriculum and what is going out and the teachers, what they are doing with the students. And the teachers are working extremely hard and doing a great job, and the effort is outstanding. I would just like, moving forward, maybe to thoughtfully reflect on seeing what it's like from the other side of that computer with an average to below average student who's not able to get extra help because she's not quite at that level, but it's here struggling like every day, not sure where to be, not sure what to click on. I don't want to go click for her. I don't want to listen and tell her exactly where to go. So that's the source of it for me, and just knowing that as a parent, man, it would be great to be able to have a choice to have her go a couple times a week into school for some type of normal, a little bit of normalcy. And again, I understand the situation, obviously, but along with knowing that that would be best for us and for her, also knowing that now the last few weeks, a bunch of other schools, locally, not locally, are giving parents a choice of remote, which is wonderful for those that need it and have risks. That's totally appropriate and correct. Just knowing that it's available to other kids, but not our kids, it hurts a little bit, and just it hurts because it's like I just feel powerless, like I can't help her. I don't know, I just don't know exactly what to do. I'm with her because my wife is at a school that's open and she has to be there. So I'm happy to help. It's very difficult for a non-educator and a parent who cares a lot to walk the line of trying to help, trying to let her struggle, watching her cry a little bit almost daily. It's very hard. But also, that's all. Obviously there's social, I don't want to get into personal stuff right now. Just an overview, but also knowing that the district had a plan, in August to give hybrid a shot. I understand why it was not, why it had to go to a different direction. And I guess I just wanted to have everyone potentially just think about, nothing can move quickly. The buzzword is always pivot. Your business has to pivot, the schools has to pivot. Pivots can be a couple different ways. It always doesn't have to be one way. And hoping to, have you guys reflect on that, and knowing that nothing can happen quickly. Maybe if health and safety guidelines are able to be followed now, handed down by the experts, and able to be followed, moving in baby steps in a direction to get some things happening, like maybe a small group of kids doing the assessment in school a little bit at a time for those that want to. Just baby steps to go towards that, as long as health and safety can be maintained and the protocols can be followed. Thank you.
Wherever you're more comfortable, really. Thank you. Bonnie and Tony, first of all, I want to thank you both for taking the time to come and talk to us. I really do appreciate it. And your questions are fair and your concerns are very valid. And they're questions that we ask ourselves on a daily basis, and they're concerns that we share with you. Look, we're on the board because we love schools, and we believe that children should be in school, and we believe in a public education, and we are trying to figure this puzzle out on how to keep students and staff safe and keep them moving forward with their learning. Some of the things that you brought up, I think Dr. McAllister can address tonight, and there might be some other things that we can kind of fill in the answers for. And let me just say, there are no good answers. There are no good answers.
And before he starts too, it's,
So,
we've spoken a little bit.
Good.
Yes,
good.
wonderful, and I didn't want to get into like details now, because we're going to speak at a future time for a few minutes, just to have a conversation.
No, that's okay, but I think because, you know, you brought up the questions and we're recording the meeting and we know that people will be watching, and while you came and asked those questions, there's other people that have the same questions. So it's a really good opportunity for us to explain what we've been doing, what we've been talking about, and where we're going. Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, thank you for coming. I have had the opportunity to speak with both of you before, certainly before this year, and now, you know, with the events. So I appreciate seeing you here tonight, and I do know we will be meeting here soon to have a further conversation, which I look forward to. Yeah, so it's a really difficult decision that we're facing, and as you attested, there's school districts all around us who are struggling with the same decision. What I can tell you is, first of all, Mrs. Vinali, with regard to the metrics, because that is a commonly cited thing that you see, you know, when a district is saying, when the numbers get to this point, then we'll return. You know, we have not gone down that road in terms of our planning, and the reason is this. When we said December 18th, when the board decided December 18th is kind of our remote learning timeline at this point, it was done with the goal of consistency first and foremost. You know, a desire to have consistency for families in terms of planning, consistency of education for our students, and consistency for our staff, so they would know with their own family situations as well as their planning that this is what will be going on for the next several months. One of the things that I've been working on this year is looking at all these models that are coming out, and I'd be curious to talk to you about your own school district, what's happening there. But there's a lot of different models that are being implemented right now, and several of them are citing metrics as the basis by which they're using to come back. And no sooner had I read one that Nutrier, was the district specifically, that Nutrier has now announced that they're going to have to go back to remote learning because the numbers are spiking. And I guess that's the concern that we all had when we had that conversation was, if we set a metric of this positivity rate or hospitalizations or whatever that is, we meet that metric and then the numbers go back the other way. Our kids are in this seesaw back and forth. And that's a concern that we wanted to be forthright about. The other thing was, with the fall coming and the flu season, the concern that you're going to have two illnesses that have a big impact on student population and attendance. So that's why we decided to make that decision. But what have we been doing to, as you talked about, getting kids back in the flow? Perhaps you've seen, you know, on our school website or through Twitter, we are bringing back a small number. And each building has about 30 kids at this point who are attending school on a regular basis. From the beginning, the state of Illinois has said students who are at high risk are the ones that we really, really need to make concerted efforts to get back first. And so that's what we've done. Each building identified through their SST, their student support teams, which students would be most in need. And so we're doing this, like you said, in baby steps, and we're trying to get those kids back to work out our protocols and see how that's going. And, you know, I can certainly speak from my perspective, which is a little bit more removed, but we do have two of our three principals who are here. And, you know, Ms. Lawson and Ms. Johnson, if you could just briefly talk about FDL, facilitated distance learning, how that has gone in your buildings, what has worked and what hasn't, if you'd like to address that just for a moment. No, you can just speak up. Yeah.
Use your teacher voice.
Just a second. Well, we're the land of little people, as everyone knows. So we spent probably those first couple days just teaching procedures. We tell them they have to have their ticket, their certification form to come through the door. And where's the procedure if you do have it, what if you don't? We're teaching, you know, the bus line again, how to get in, where your seat is, where to put your things, how to get on Zoom, how to even turn on things sometimes. How do I carry all of this stuff and do this and do that and do that? So for us, it's been a lot of procedures, mostly last week. This week or today, we've seen just a really nice settling. Our second graders are just on it. The room is quiet as can be. They've got their headphones on, they're engaged, they're doing what they're supposed to. We're actually going to be able to add a couple more students into that room. Our first grade is packed. And that room has been just a little bit more challenging for us based on the makeup of the kids that have gone in there. one of the challenges we found is that we have kids from, so if you have 8 or 9 teachers in a section, and they each might have one kid in that room, all those kids are on a completely different Zoom, and they're doing something different. So to monitor that and to get to who needs to be helped, and to get this person off because they're going to art and this one's going to music and this isn't, and geez, we can't do PE in a room with 9 kids who are trying to concentrate and do what they're supposed to. So we had some of those like logistic things to think through, like if this child's doing this and this is doing this, who can go where? And we worked through that, and the kids, as kids do, probably adapted better than a lot of the rest of us did while we were figuring that out. Our kindergarten room, we intentionally started tiny because we knew some of those kids had never set foot in a school before. And while everyone's working hard and doing a great job, it's not the kindergarten that we always knew, and it's not the kindergarten we loved, and we want to be able to build some of those aspects into it also. So we started out with a very, very small group in that, and we'll add to that just a little bit at a time, but we wanted to make sure that they were getting a lot more personalized and individualized attention just so that they were comfortable. Because here I am in this room, there's not a lot of people here, I don't know everybody, all I can see are eyeballs, and you want me to push a lot of buttons and change this and find things. So we're taking into account their age and what's going on, but I am very, very, very pleased with how it's gone, how the kids are responding, how they're adapting, and our ability, hopefully, to add on to that, you know, so.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Johnson, James Hart.
Hello, everybody. No, no, I'm not going. Very similar to what Melissa just said, just in terms of starting off with those procedures. You know, we had 6th graders who hadn't been in the building, you know, just in terms of, hey, where am I going? But in terms of doing those temperature checks, making sure you have the form. Again, what do you do when you don't have the form? We also encounter the situation where you have students in a room and they're on Zoom, but their schedules, you know, are totally different. So that's one of the things that we feel like is getting a better handle of, even like I see for this week, in terms of even our staff. And they're like, okay, I know that, you know, Johnny has this teacher and whatever, in terms of writing assignments down and trying, you know, helping to keep them organized. But I do, I love the fact that, number one, we have students in the building, you know, so loving that we do, you know, we started small, we have some, and looking to expand, you know, and looking where we have 6th grade actually is our biggest grade for us. So right now we can't bring any more, but we have some room for some 7th and 8th graders that we know that we can bring in. And now that we see that, okay, hey, what's working, what's not working, and we've been able to adapt and adjust, and it's been going well with the students. We've actually had, I think since we've had students in the building, I feel like we've had more staff that are here, you know, especially when they know that they've got a couple of students, so those students have actually gone in a step, even though the teacher's still teaching on Zoom, they may go in for that math period, or they may go in for their intervention or Panther time and actually be in person with the teacher, even though, you know, while the teacher is teaching the other students. And that's given our teachers some experience with doing that too, especially as we look to, you know, bring more students back into the building and what that may look like.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I'll also point out that, so facilitated distance learning is, I don't want to give the wrong impression. It's kids who are still doing their distance learning just here, so they have an adult supervising them, maybe for some family situations that are a little more challenging to have supervision at home. So one of the things, we happen to have Laura Kozel, who's here, a Churchill teacher. She's our union president, but also has been one of the first teachers to say, I would like to bring kids back into the room and actually provide direct instruction while simultaneously Zooming to some who are still remote. So a big kudos to Laura. Laura, I don't know if you wanted to mention your experience with that or no? Okay, no, that's fine. I put her on the spot, but I just wanted to thank Laura for doing that, because it's you know, again, using your term of baby steps, you know, doing things to work in that direction. I want to make very clear that every one of us wants our kids back. You should have seen when they first came back for FDL, all of us were literally going out into the rooms just to see kids, right? It was exciting to have them here. There are also other groups, you know, band is now doing rehearsals in the parking lot. We've had fall sports, orchestra is beginning. So those things are happening. I realize it's not going to be at the pace maybe that you would like or that others would like, but we also want to make sure that we do it well. We want to make sure that we do it. When we do it, we are ready to go 100%. So again, I do look forward to having that further conversation, but I know you're speaking not just for yourselves. I know you're speaking for a lot of people who have similar sentiments. So thank you for that.
I want to just add a couple things. Dr. McAllister mentioned what happened at New Trier. They went back for 1 week, and they had, in many of our opinions, the most robust plan to get students back into the building. 1 week, and they are going full remote. We've also heard of several other districts that have had essentially the same experience. They get the kids back in, and within 1 or 2 weeks, they're shutting down again, and that's one of the things we wanted to avoid this fall. We thought it was more important for kids to have that consistency. The other thing that we're kind of dealing with is that there's no state or federal, for lack of a better term, clearinghouse of what's being done and how it's going. It's all done by colleagues calling colleagues. How's it going in your building? What are you trying? Or how is remote learning going for your district? What are the decisions you're making? How's your community doing? How are the kids doing? How are the teachers doing? There's no clearinghouse, there's no place for us to get information about how many cases are there in each school district, or how many districts have cases of COVID, and how are they dealing with it, and how is it spread through the community. There's no place for us to get that information, and even though the newspaper might report there's 44 districts that have had cases, we know that's not accurate because of what we're hearing from a variety of districts. So we're trying to take all of this information, it's like a vortex of information, and distill it into something that when we get kids back, we can make this work, rather than trying something and sending everyone home after a week or two. We want to get those kids back, believe me, we want those kids back in the building. But more than that, we want to get it right, and we want to make sure that our staff has the opportunity to stay healthy along with the students when they come back. So we're working through all of those things. I believe that in November we should have more information about what January will look like.
Yeah, so at this point, I am meeting with the 3 building principals. We do believe that the plan, whatever the plan looks like, needs to be unique based on the age of the kids. So meeting with each building, having them kind of comprise what they feel will be the best model for their respective age levels, and then present that plan, survey families again to say, okay, here's what we have for a return to school plan. Are you in, or are you going to go with the remote option? And we know that some will go with the remote option. That's another huge challenge that every district faces, is simply staffing this. We have to provide the remote option by the state requirements. Whether that's 5% of our families that want that or 45% is obviously a huge question. So we will be resurveying our families to get that clarity from them, and then planning for a return to school afterwards. Yes.
I just want to say, I'm sorry.
I'd just like to add one more thing. While I hear you that many school districts have had to stop because of COVID, there are also many school districts that are only 6 or 7 of in-person learning, whether that be hybrid or full day or half day. There are also many districts that have that in school since the first or right after Labor Day. So that needs to be taken into consideration too. Some districts are making this work.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. There was a couple of board meetings ago, we had our highest attendance rate at our board meeting. There were 200 or so folks over Zoom. And I just want, because you came here to be heard, and I want to let you know I appreciate that, because typically the voices are through emails that we see, and the district has been great at sharing that with you board members, tremendous transparency. But rarely do we have those come to voice their concerns, right? And you came from a positive place. I can tell you that the concern that I know is, first of all, there's several of us that have kids that are in the district or just migrated out of the district. I have, 3 daughters, all of which came through the district. Now I have e-learners at HF. And even with them, they're saying, Dad, I don't know if I'm retaining, right? So our learners are wondering, is this sticking, right? But I would tell you what went into my vote, right? So just to help inform, I came as a parent first, point blank. I also came from someone who is in the private sector where we just surveyed our employees to see who would voluntarily want to come back to the offices, knowing that no one's there. We thought that we would get maybe 6%, less than 4%. And so that is aligned with what we're seeing as far as actual percentages from our resources in our district. And then the question is, if someone's sitting in the classroom, will the teacher be there with them or screen? And what would that feel like? So I agree that when you do meet with Dr. Mitchell, it would be great to get some lessons learned and to find out, as Shelley was saying, what's worked, where you've been. But I really appreciate you sharing with us. But I just also wanted to let you know, as far as me personally as a board member, I took into consideration as a parent, but also the resources that would be needed so our young learners could really have an effective day. And at the end of this, and I'll just close, I don't know if anyone will say they did the right thing, because it's TBD. And let's not forget, we're hoping that as we go into our flu season, that the peaks won't be as they were in March. And so let's just stay prayerful and hopeful otherwise there. But thank you for sharing. I feel confident that your conversation with Dr. Mitchell will shed more light and we can reach an amicable conclusion on this. So thank you.
I would also like to say that I appreciate you coming forward. This pandemic and stuff, not only for the major stakeholders in terms of the students and the parents and the staff and everybody, it's one of the strange things to me because it's all about risk, right? And it's all about how much risk you're willing to take, how much risk is safe to take, how much risk is not safe to take. And just like with anything I've experienced in life, nothing is 100%, right? So me as an individual, I may be willing to take 60% risk. You as an individual may be willing to take more or take less. And so, because we're not just dealing with one-on-one, I wish we were, with some kind of way we could say, okay, whatever any individual is willing to take that risk, we can meet that risk. But you're trying to manage for the group and not for an individual. So I'm just saying that to reinforce with you that we are sensitive to people's individual needs, and we're trying to balance that against group needs. But back when we first voted before school started, we voted and approved to go with the hybrid version because we recognize that kids learn best when they are in the seats in front of teachers and having that direct interaction. And then the metrics changed, the risk concerns changed, and so we went the other way. But I hope with, us starting with the return of some students that, like Dr. McAllister was talking about, if people do have individual situations, maybe we can work with those people to offer some type of solution that will best help that student, because it is our mission that all students will learn and all students will be served. And I know that all of our building administrators, staff, principals are concerned about any situation where a student is not learning to their potential. And we want to try to work with families to do everything we can to support coming, and I appreciate what you had to share with us.
So I'm going to chime in too. I think, you know, to reiterate what Ron and Greg said, you know, that, you know, appreciate you coming here and sharing your experience, and your thoughts, and your desires, and what you hope from the district. So I think that's it's very important, and it's excellent to hear. I think, you know, since this all started in March or so, I know I've been involved in a lot of meetings with the district. I know a lot of other board members have. You know, listen, we've heard from teachers, we've heard from administration, we've heard from principals, heard from deans, we've heard from, you know, from everyone across the district, and everyone was trying to figure out how to best serve the kids. And I mean, I've heard from many folks in that range express all the same issues and concerns that you have shared. So I don't think that's surprising to you that that's how the district is approaching this. And we're trying to figure out, and everyone's trying to figure out how to best serve kids. And I think, as Scott said, get them back here and get them into the building. And, you know, Ron had mentioned risk, and everyone's trying to figure out how to manage that risk and get folks in the safest way and provide the best learning experience possible. So I know that doesn't necessarily make things necessarily better for your personal situation, but just wanted to share that everyone's trying to figure out how to best do this and how to get kids back in. And I think, you know, and especially serve all the kids, the ones who, you know, are, you know, everywhere along the learning curriculum. And it's just, it's tough. And there's, I mean, as you guys know. So basically, you know, what I want to say is we're all working on this, and we're all trying to figure out how to best do it. And I know and folks have put in lots and lots and lots and lots of hours trying to figure this out over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months. So hopefully we'll get it right sooner than later, or continue to get it right. I mean, not that we're going to do it wrong, but make it better. So hopefully it won't take too long to do, but we're trying.
Quick question, Dr. McCallum, do we have small group sessions for parents, just to have an outlet to talk about challenges? Because what I heard, I felt it, right? And I feel, I won't say pain, but just, I'm trying, and it is tough to see your chance. I'm just curious if we have the opportunity to get some parents together just to vocalize some of their challenges, make it, like we're trying to get lessons learned from schools, so we've got opportunities with parents.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing to do at the building level, especially because those, again, needs are fairly unique building to building to building, but it's certainly a conversation we can have with our principals in terms of you know, making that available to people. So we certainly want the feedback. We've received a lot of feedback, but to do so in a different type of.
And I'm coming from we talked about it before in our Zoom around social emotional, right? And we talked about resources for, you know, our staff, which we know there are resources there, but most, you know, thinking about parents, because we talked about in our strategic planning, ensuring that as a community school, it's students, parents, the community, right? And I just think there's opportunity there, not as an organized grad session, I want to be clear, but coming from a position of, this is how I'm feeling, have you felt this way?
Sure.
Because I can tell you, when my kids came to me and said, I don't know if it's sticky, oh, how can I help, right? And so I felt what you were saying, Tony, in regards to that. So if there's an opportunity, I don't know if that's in class, and we've heard what some other districts are doing, or is something that we can leverage resources that are in our community that want to see how they can help us.
Sure.
Because I do also think that one of the most important things underneath all of this that we're trying to do is keep everybody connected. I think it's real important that everybody feels, whether it's it's the staff, it's the parents, it's the students, everybody feels that they are cared about, everybody feels that their needs are important, that their situations are important. And as we know in life, you can't always solve all problems, but you can at least hopefully help people feel like they were heard. And anything that would help to reinforce with people on all levels, including students, that they have been heard and that they are being cared about, I think is something that we would support 100%.
We can definitely look into how the buildings can best support the parents as well as the students. Anybody else have anything?
I'd like to say something. I'd also like to say thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Finelli for coming out and expressing your concerns. I have a student in the district, and I absolutely empathize with what you said, Mrs. Finelli. When your child is upset and, or not feeling like they're learning something, I was just having a conversation with Kathy and Catherine earlier today, that very thing. It is very disheartening when you see your child going through that. So I just want to say that we do hear you, and we absolutely will take what you have said to us today into consideration. And I also know that, our children retaining that information in classes is very important. And sometimes through e-learning, they don't always get that information. And when they're feeling like they're not learning, or that, things are not, going as well as it would in person, then as a parent, that's hard. That's a tough thing to deal with. And but I also want to say that I do think, like what Dr. McAllister was saying about like bringing the band back in. I cannot tell you how many band parents and kids were so excited that first day coming back to band. They were so happy, and to see those kids come back and be able to play and have the band back together, it warmed my heart so much that they could have that interaction. And so I really do hope that we will get to a point where our kids can come back and be social and get that in-person experience that they truly need. And I say this as a parent first, but also as a teacher myself. I understand that interaction is so important, and I miss my kids, being able to be in person with them. So I understand that. But just know that we do hear you, and we hope that we can definitely get to the point where we can have our kids back and have some type of normalcy to our daily routines. So thank you for coming and expressing your concerns to us. We appreciate it.
Well, and thank you guys for being welcoming. It's so personally, it's very hard for me to come. I don't want to complain about stuff, right? I just want to take care of stuff. And I don't want to come and sound like complaining. I'm not.
And please understand that we do not feel like you're complaining. We feel like you're concerned. And that is exactly
It's
what
not.
we mean.
These are not complaints, they're comments and concerns, and there's a big
Yeah,
difference.
I hope I communicated it somewhat properly.
Yes.
It almost started at the beginning of the year, again, it's so personalized. If our older kids were in 4th grade right now and this was happening, I'm not here. It's probably fine. You know, it's probably fine.
Different though.
And just, be able to go, to start off okay, we're remote, it'll be good, it'll be okay, we'll go after it. And, the joke at first was well, what, I got to stay home now, and goofing around. And then over time, you start to see little slippages, and that's why I just wanted to make sure I communicated it properly.
Absolutely.
And thank you guys for having open ears. And to piggyback on your point of activities, the little things matter a lot.
Absolutely.
Our son was able to do James Hart baseball, awesome. Great, something to go to mostly every day, 3 times a week, whatever. Look forward to it, go have some stuff to do. Even something as simple as the Churchill kickball last week. Oh my God, she was thrilled to go. It was an hour, it was easy, it was fun. I'm not saying it was easy to put it on. It was fun. It was just something small where they could connect with the school, see some other people. That's stuff goes a long way, and it's like,
Absolutely.
so, any opportunities to take advantage of, like, neat little things to bring people together in a safe environment and have a connection, have, like, that was great. The kickball was awesome. So I just wanted to agree with you on that point about the activity.
Yeah, and we're constantly looking for more opportunities like that. Our teachers want to see those kids, you know that, even if they can just see it from here up, they want to see them. So again, thank you for coming, we really do appreciate it. Okay, are there any board members who have any reports from any meetings that you've attended? All right. Assistant Superintendent's report.
Yes, well, thank you. Yeah, we had an opportunity, obviously, to implement and begin our FDLA program, so that has gone very well, and a huge thank you to the principals and everyone, all the teachers who have worked so tirelessly to make that happen, make remote instruction happen. We have, tomorrow, there's a Title IX training that several of us in the administrative team will be doing, so we can be up to date with the current law in that regard. This past Friday, we had a really neat event. Maybe you even saw this on Channel 7 News. We've been using Kickert Bus Company for several years, and one of their employees who is pretty much dedicated to working exclusively with District 153, Janice Johnson, affectionately known as JJ, she celebrated her 50th year of employment with Kickert, which is a really, really remarkable thing when you think about it. So the bus company officials had a really special celebration for her over at their headquarters, and then they contacted us, and she works closely with us, and they came over here, and a lot of our team went out there and got a picture with JJ and presented her with a gift from us as well, because she is truly a special individual and works with our kids and gets them here safely. I mean, literally thousands and thousands of 153 kids that JJ has been a part of in terms of providing safe transportation. So that was one of those fun events that we got to celebrate recently. We've talked about the events that we have had going on, and I think, again, everyone is very, very pleased when we're able to see our kids. And right now, like I said, we are in the process of planning for a return to school at the building level. And then also diversity and equity. Last year, we have a district-wide committee dedicated to diversity and equity initiatives, and then COVID happened in the spring, and so we got a little bit sidelined as a result of that. But we definitely want to keep those initiatives moving forward. And so Ms. Kerr, one of her responsibilities in the district office is to kind of lead that initiative, and she and I will be meeting with that committee along with Dr. Mitchell. And our goal is to provide the board with an update at the November meeting as to where we are, and to kind of lay out a vision for the next 3 to 5 years as to what the diversity and equity initiative will look like in District 153. So we're excited to share that with all of you.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have several consent agenda items. The first is the personnel report. We have intent to retire of Don Herman, FMLA leave for Henry Salinas, Ryan Gallagher, Molly Cummings, and Kelsey Wheatley. We have a resignation from Stephanie Nix, assistant at Churchill, an increase to full-time employment from Maggie Backus. Long-term, we've hired several long-term subs, some for the FDLA program, James Summers and Katie Schultz, also Vanita Das, Carly Zadarosny, and Patricia Evans. And we have a technology leader stipend for Emily Casper on that. Are there any questions on the personnel report? Okay, we need to authorize the chief school business official to pay the usual and customary bills for November 2020. Any questions on the bills for November going forward? All right. And then we need to adopt new and revised policies. These are policies that were presented at our last board meeting, and they bring us into alignment with new laws and other things that have been passed. So, are there any questions on the new or revised policies? Any questions on any consent agenda item? Is there a motion to approve?
Moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approve consent agenda as presented in items 11A, B, and C.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mrs. Bethea?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hattenhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
7 ayes.
Motion carries. And we have 2 action agenda items. The first is the last payment of September 2020 and the first payment of October 2020 bills. Are there any questions on the bills? All right, is there a motion to approve?
Moved upon the recommendation of the chief school business official and the superintendent that we, the Board of Education, authorize the last payment of September 2020 and the first payment of October 2020 bills in an amount not to exceed $2,398,708 and most importantly, 89 cents.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bethea?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hattenhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
7 ayes.
Motion carries. And we have employment of Chloe Russ for a position of assistant at Willow. Any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Moved upon the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education approve the employment of Chloe Ross effective October 19, 2020, upon the terms recommended by the superintendent, positioned only upon receipt of a satisfactory criminal background report and upon receipt no later than October 30, 2020, of the evidence of proper legal qualifications for the positions to be filled.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hattenhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mr. Bosch?
Yes.
Mrs. Bethea?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
7 ayes.
Motion carries. Is there any written communication to the board?
No, there is not, Madam President.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate it. Stay healthy. Thank you.